What's going on? Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, my name is Courtney. And if you're new here, I'm a strength coach and a nutrition coach, certified personal trainer, the whole nine yards for women in their 30s and 40s who are done starting over every freaking Monday. And today's video, I want to start with a question. And I really want you to sit with this question and think about it for a second. Because when was the last time you felt completely neutral about food? I'm talking not excited about it, not guilty about it, not tracking it, not mentally calculating everything that's going into it, just sitting down and eating a meal and then moving on and enjoying your day. Because for a lot of women that I work with, that question is like I smacked them or I punched them in the gut. Because the honest answer is never, or at least not since they were maybe 7 years old. And here's what I think is actually happening. I think most of us have been in this diet culture realm for so long in so many different forms that we don't even recognize it anymore when it shows up in different clothes. Which brings me to today's video and everything I wanted to talk about. Because diet culture didn't die. It just got rebranded. And in 2026, it's now called metabolic health. And I think you deserve to understand what that actually means, what it's genuinely used for, and where it's pulling the same old song and dance or the same old trick in fancier outfits. So let's go through it together. I want you to grab your coffee, water, espresso martini, glass of wine, whatever your drink of choice is today. I could use an espresso martini. That's where that came from. But this is going to be worth your time to watch this video. So first, I want to give you some context because this isn't the first time that this has happened. Diet culture has been reinventing itself roughly every decade since the 1980s. Every single time it picks up language of whatever is in the cultural experience right now, and it uses it to sell the same underlying idea. The idea is that your body is the problem, and that's what needs to be fixed. So in the 1980s, this was before I was born, but I work with women who were born in the 80s, so they understand it was the low-fat era. Fat was the enemy. Everything was fat free. We had cookies that were considered a health food. Women were eating plain rice and rice cakes and all these things and feeling victorious about it. And meanwhile, the food industry was just quietly replacing that fat with sugar. And they called it wellness. Then came the 90s. I'm a 90s baby. You know, we grew up in this era, but it was all about low carb in the 90s and the early 2000s. So it's low carb, Atkins, South Beach. Now carbs are the enemy. White bread, you were a criminal if you ate that. And we just ate bacon and cheese and we called it a diet. The restriction was the same. The villain just changed in the story. Then the came around, and this one is important. It was the clean eating. That's what happened. We did clean eating. And this one was a sneaky one because it borrowed language from people who were genuinely trying to move away from processed foods and eat more whole foods and less packaging and more real ingredients. That whole part, we remember that, right? It was actually good. That part was good. But clean eating quickly became a morality system. Food was either clean or it was dirty. It was good or it was bad. And then suddenly women were obsessively restrictive about food quality and calling it healthy. And I watch my clients now go from counting calories to spending 3 hours a week reading ingredient labels in a panic. It's just different anxiety, the same exhausting relationship with food. Then we got wellness, which such a genius rebrand because it sounds so gentle. Wellness isn't a diet, it's a lifestyle. It's adapting, it's choosing, and it's jade rollers and celery juice and $14 lattes. And underneath all of it, it's the same message. Your body, as it is right now, needs to be optimized. Now in 2026, we have the metabolic health like we just talked about. And I'm not saying that it's all bad. Don't come after me in the comments. I'm going to tell you exactly where metabolic health is a genuine improvement over everything that came before it, like all the counting and low fat and low carb, but I need you to understand the pattern first, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's actually the whole point I'm trying to get at. So let's actually define this. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not pretending to be a doctor, but I've done my research and my background is in research. So, I have all the information, because I think a lot of people are using the term without this clear picture of what it means. Metabolic health is about how effectively your body processes and uses energy. Specifically, we're talking about blood sugar regulation, how your body handles glucose after you eat it, insulin sensitivity, how your cells respond to insulin signals and take it into glucose. We got cholesterol, triglyceride levels, blood pressure, inflammatory markers. And here's the thing, these are all meaningful health markers. I don't want you to think that they're not. Research is pretty clear that poor metabolic health, chronic elevated blood sugar, insulin resistance, high triglycerides, is associated with increased risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cognitive decline. This stuff is real, and I'm not saying it's not. So when the conversation shifted from are you hitting your macros to how is your body actually functioning, that principle is a more meaningful question. The old framework treated the body almost like a calculator. Put the right numbers in, get the right numbers out. We hear it all the time. Calories in, calories out. But the metabolic health frame says, actually, two people can eat the same thing and have completely different responses in their body, because sleep matters, stress matters, because our gut microbiome and our hormones and our history with food, all of it affects how we process what we eat. That is more accurate than the human model of nutrition. And for women, specifically women in their 30s and 40s, this matters a lot, because we're going through perimenopause, we're doing hormonal shifts, we have stress load. These things genuinely affect metabolic function. And the idea that nutrition advice should account for what's actually happening in your body rather than just handling your genetic macro split, I'm here for that. I'm not saying I'm not. So yes, the concept of metabolic health, very valid, very useful, a real improvement. But now let me tell you where it goes sideways. Here's where I start to get nervous, and I want to be really specific because refinement matters here. The first place I see metabolic health being weaponized is in continuous glucose monitors. These are small wearable sensors originally developed for people managing their diabetes that track sugar levels, like your blood sugar levels, in real time. And in the last couple of years, they've been marketed aggressively to healthy women as a wellness tool. The pitch sounds reasonable. See how your body responds to different foods. Personalize your nutrition to unique glucose response. Optimize. Here's what I actually see happening. A client eats a banana, her glucose goes up because that's what glucose does when you eat carbohydrates. It's normal, it's expected, it's not a problem. But the app flags it, and then suddenly a woman who's eating fruit is now afraid to eat fruit. She's checking her monitor before and after every single meal. She's more stressed about food than she was before she put this device on her body. And I have to ask, is this health? Because that is not what health feels like to me. The second place I see this all going wrong is inflammatory food conversations. Inflammatory has become this 2026 version of dirty. I watch women cutting out foods one by one, nightshades, seed oils, legumes, gluten, fruit, and the list just keeps growing and growing. The anxiety just keeps growing with it. And now we are having that obsessive tracking with a medical vocabulary behind it. The third place is what I want to call metabolic protocols, which are basically just diets. Now they have a clinical name, so they feel more legitimate. And you're not just doing a diet, you're following a metabolic reset. You're not restricting, you're just optimizing your insulin response. Do we see this? It's the same. It's the same restriction, just harder to argue because it sounds super scientific. The women who come to me after going deep on this metabolic health content are often more confused, more anxious about food than they were when they were just tracking macros. Because at least with macros, the rules were clear. With metabolic health, there are 1,000 competing protocols, and there's no consensus on what optimize even means for a healthy person. And I want to tell you about a woman that I worked with, keeping details vague to protect her privacy because she gave me permission to share her story, and I just want to make sure she's good. She came to me after spending about 18 months deep in this metabolic health world. She started wearing the monitor. She cut out gluten, then dairy, then all these things. Her list was long. She was eating what most people would describe as an objectively healthy diet. Lots of vegetables, quality protein, whole foods. She was miserable doing this, cutting out all this stuff. She could not go to dinner with her family out to eat without stressing and researching the menu beforehand. She would turn down birthday cake at her daughter's birthday because she was worried about a glucose spike. She felt like a failure on any day that she ate something that was off her protocol. She started to dread meals altogether. And she came to me because she was not making any progress in her workouts. She was exhausted all the time. She was under eating, not intentionally, but because so many foods had become off limits, she simply was just not eating enough. And when I looked at her markers from her doctor, her blood sugar was fine. Her inflammatory markers were fine. Her cholesterol was fine. Her body was healthy. And her doctors even said that. But her relationship with food was not healthy. That is diet culture. It doesn't matter what vocabulary we are using. If it's making you more anxious, more restricted, more disconnected from your body's own signals, that is diet culture. So how do we actually tell the difference between nutrition advice that's going to help you and advice that's going to restart this cycle? I use 3 questions. So go ahead and write these down or keep them in your notes on your phone, whatever you want to do. Question 1, does this make me feel more or less anxious about food? If the answer is more, that is a red flag. This is like dating. We're not going to ignore red flags here. Good nutrition advice should give you clarity and ease, not more rules to stress about. Question 2, can I sustain this on my absolute worst week? Not your best week, your worst week. The Tuesday where everything went sideways, you're eating dinner at 9 p.m. Can it survive that week? Because if it cannot, it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable strategy. It's a plan that requires perfect conditions. And I know the women that I work with, we don't have perfect conditions. A plan that only works when everything is perfect isn't a plan. It's just a wish. Question 3, is this making me more or less connected with my body's actual hunger and fullness signals? Your body has a regulatory system that's built in, and it's evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, and they're pretty good at telling you when you need to eat food and when you've had enough food. And any approach that consistently overrides those signals through restriction, fear, or rigid protocols is just working against you, not with you. So if the approach that you're doing passes all 3 of those, calmer, survives the hard weeks, brings you closer to your own body's signals, it's probably worth exploring. If it fails any one of them, I don't care how much research it cites, it's just not right for you. And that's okay. Food freedom is not eat whatever you want to with no awareness. That's just noise in the other direction. Real food freedom is eating in a way that makes your body feel good, that you can sustain without white knuckling your week, and that doesn't make you feel like a moral failure when you eat freaking birthday cake. And mostly consistent, mostly nourished, and also flexible enough for real life that's going on. A birthday dinner, a stressful week where cereal is what we're having tonight, a vacation where you eat gelato because you're in Italy and it would be a crime not to. Food freedom is awareness without anxiety, knowing that protein matters for satiation and muscle recovery, and being able to apply that without tracking every gram. Knowing that ultra-processed foods make you feel like shit and garbage, and choosing mostly not to eat it. Not because it's dirty, I don't want you to label it like that, but because it genuinely does not make you feel good. It doesn't feel good in your body. It's a version of eating where you can trust yourself, where you are the expert on your own body, not an app, not the algorithm, not the protocol, where you think of food as fuel and pleasure and culture and connection, not something where it's going to determine your whole life and who you are as a person. That's what I'm working towards with every single client that I'm working with. Not a protocol, not an optimization, a sustained relationship with food that we haven't had in a really long time if we think about it. And that it can survive your actual life. Here's the bottom line to wrap this all up, since I've just been yapping. Metabolic health as a concept is not your enemy. What's in this conversation is useful. And thinking about food quality over quantity and understanding how stress and sleep affect how you process food, moving away from calorie obsession, that progress is real. But diet culture is smart. It always picks up on the language of whatever's fighting back against it, and it uses it to sell the same thing. So right now it's metabolic health. It's being used to sell you restriction and anxiety, just more scientific vocabulary than before. The tell is always the same. Does this make you feel more at peace with food and your body or less? Does it survive real life or only perfect conditions? You have spent enough time and enough of your life starting over. The goal is to stop starting over. And that starts with building a good relationship with food that isn't dependent on the next protocol, the next plan, the next rebrand. What I'm here for every single week. So subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you next Wednesday. And if you want a practical starting point, not a diet, not a protocol, just a real framework for showing up in your actual life, I have a new thing called the Anti-Reset Starter Guide, and it's going to be linked in the description. It's free. It takes about 20 minutes to go through, and it starts with one thing I wish someone would have told me years earlier, and it is you are not the problem. The plan is the problem. So I want to fix the plan, and you can do that if you download that free guide. Nothing is coming from me except for that. But I will see you next week, and thank you for listening to my ramble for the last 20 minutes. Bye.